Hey guys, you Fields here. Today we're going to be going over the portfolio for the week. So to start off, you can see the last week for the market was actually pretty decent and a lot of areas. Obviously, the areas that were doing exceptionally well prior weeks, such as energy, are not doing that good this week. Reason for that is there's talk that we're trying to finally end the conflict in the Middle East, in Iran, but whether or not that's going to happen, I don't know. There's actually just a tweet or a Truth Social post or whatever you call it pretty recently from Trump. And I'll show that in a second here. It's quite a wild one. So, you know, but it basically says Tuesday will be power plant, bridge day, and wrap up in one in Iran. So you can read the rest there. By the way, this is on Easter and everything. So yeah, take that with how you want it, but I don't know if it's going to be ending or not. All I know is the markets are, well, we'll see actually. Futures aren't open quite yet. If I go to TradingView here, I think I still have another like 3-ish hours, I want to say. Yeah, 3.5 hours. So we'll see what happens then, but only time will tell. In terms of our portfolio, we've actually done pretty well this week. So we're up about 3.49%. SPY is up 3.42%. Of that, 2.5% up on Composer, 3.87 from M1 Finance, which is kind of crazy. And then Webull almost, that's like 9.6%. So you can see how we're doing there. Doing pretty well, might I say. Pretty happy about that performance. Even Composer, because some of these, as these kind of start to shift out into, non-bearish outlooks, sometimes it can be hard to capture that movement because it can be so fast, especially with stuff like this, where that like a news headline can send the markets going flying for a brief amount of time, and then it kind of returns back. It sometimes can be hard. So our algorithms right now are in BSV and BTOL. We were previously in stuff like SQQQ when we were in Bear, as well as TECL, TECL, when we were doing Bull. So that was when we were in the oversold territory. But now we've shifted instead of SQQQ into BSV, and the main reason for that, well, BSV was where the majority of our allocation is at, because the majority is in this Holy Grail strategy here. You can see how that looks right here. So the reason that is the case is because the highest RSI is BSV currently, not SQQQ. So, and then the other BTOL comes from this strategy here. So, yep. But Composer's done really good. We're just starting to go back positive again, which is nice. You can see 3.38% on that and about 12% on that since starting. So I'm pretty happy. Probably gonna make some potential changes here. So I'm trying to kind of consolidate it into a single fund. As I've mentioned before in the last, I think, 2-ish weeks, I'm trying to sell out of all my positions on M1 Finance eventually, and then move all of the funds over to here into a better suited thing where it's more automatic rather than me having to change every quarter or every year or whatever it may be on M1 Finance. I think M1 Finance is a great tool, but for me, I think I actually did really well. You can see like total, we're actually beating all of them. The only issue that I have with it is just, again, the fact that I have to update that list. So if one of those companies starts to do poorly, so let's say let's say Nvidia or just semiconductors as a whole does poorly for the next 5 years, I'm going to suffer quite a lot. And I don't really want to have to do that, where an ETF that I can choose would basically do that for me, or another algorithm that's just safer than what I typically run. So that's kind of my thought process there. So I've kind of come up with a new one here, what I'm calling the Golden Lotus Fund. It's done very well, but basically it's just a mix of these two. So we'll see how those perform. But you can see I added a lot of money there on this one, and that's actually just the deposit from M1 Finance. I also didn't see it, but the reason I had $110 is actually because a dividend from SQQQ, which is crazy timing. Just so happens that I was able to capture that, so pretty happy about that, because that's, I don't want to say free money, but moving into M1 Finance, so we can take a look here, and so the biggest gainers here, we had AMD up 6.7%, quite crazy. Real estate, biggest gainer there was from Realty. And then technology, biggest gainer there was from Google. Now, part of that's probably with the TurboQuant stuff, which is basically more RAM efficient loading. Basically, it doesn't mean that it's going to destroy models per se. In fact, a lot of people, in my opinion, this is actually not a sign of, hey, this is anti AI in the sense that, or like anti data centers and stuff like that. In my opinion, this is actually going to drive more growth and more fuel into those. Because think about it, again, according to TurboQuant stuff, if we can get like a 5x more memory efficient thing, that means we could potentially add 5 times more in certain areas. That being said, you come into a lot of other bottlenecks, such as space. There's still the heat problem. That's the biggest problem, and other stuff like that. But the good news is this could be very good for something like consumer RAM prices, which have been suffering. And so I think that's why MU is done kind of, You can see how that's done. But moving on. So on the bottom, we have financials. You can see Visa and MasterCard continue to decline, down on 1.5% each, which is crazy. And then healthcare, we have 3% down on Vertex. And last but not least, consumer discretionary, biggest loser there was Home Depot. So if we go over to the activity panel, we can see that we've received a few dividends here. So that was all of these. So we got one from Shell for $7.52, PepsiCo 584, AVGO 2, Prologis 363, AVGO again 65, Nvidia 7 cents, and Coca-Cola 449. So pretty nice. Now if we go into the holdings, you can see AMD is up 66%, Google's up 65%. Super nice growth there. And then we go on the opposite side of things. You can see here, Microsoft down 16% still, AMT down 12%, Home Depot down 11%, Visa down 10%, and MasterCard down 10%. What does suck, I was looking, I'm pretty sure Microsoft is actually our biggest holding by cost basis, which is kind of insane to think, because it's also the one that's done the worst so far, right? At the current time. So it's just kind of crazy to me, because that means that would be even more. But yeah, a lot of these, it's just very interesting. I There's nothing really I can do except hope some of these come up. Some of them I'm not really too worried about if they do just fall, like AMT, because we have such a small cost basis in that. Like we've only lost $50 on it. Something like Microsoft, though, that's not, that's the opposite. I do think Microsoft will start to turn around eventually. Same with Visa and MasterCard. I don't think there's a world at least in the next couple of years, that these just continue to do worse. They're still the two largest financial companies, like in terms of, you know, providers. I'm pretty sure. I mean, there are, right? There's countries such as like, China, and I think of other countries in Asia, for example, and some other countries I've heard of trying to kind of remove these providers as the primary providers, through sources like their own tech, such as, in China, you can pay with Alipay or WeChat Pay, for example, where you can still pay with Visa and Mastercard, but credit cards and debit cards as a whole are just not very common in China. Just because why would I carry a wallet full of cards when I could just have it all on my phone? It's just way more convenient from the consumer standpoint. So that's what's kind of driving it there. There's other stuff that you could argue potentially, like control, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to, I just don't think the world as a whole is at a point. Oh, also Brazil is another one that's uh, kind of creating their own digital payment system. But like, for example, the U.S. We're still very heavily dependent on this stuff, right? I don't think there's a single app that you can go to a restaurant, for example, and pay, or go to a grocery store and pay. There's stuff like Venmo or Zelle, which you can give to other people that you know. It's more of like a more personal thing. There's reasons for that as well, such as like you have to give out um, your email or your phone number, for example. But also, yeah, there's just not enough mainstream adoption to where I feel like that these are going to do poorly. And I think this could just be a sector rotation thing. There are a few companies here that I am a little bit worried about, though, like such as Home Depot and Procter and Gamble. Those are surprising, in my opinion. Procter and Gamble, I think the entire time we've held it, has really just been on the border of that red and green. So it's been really interesting holding that. But moving on, I don't think I'm going to be selling anything this week. If anything, I would consider selling semiconductors off, especially AMD, because I'm at a 66% gain. Something like Nvidia and APGO still have only only 20%. So we'll see kind of how those do going forward. But I mean, I made the bad judgment call a little while ago, because I used to hold SMH, which is like 3x, um, which semiconductors. But you could see if I held that, I would have been up 115%, 112%. So obviously, I might have made the wrong choice there. Although you can see there's quite a big dip there. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Anyways, moving on to the last part of the update here. We have Webull, so you can see here how that did. Friday was a holiday, Good Friday, so that's why we had a shorter week this week. But you can see here it's a 7% up, 5% down, and 3% up, 4% up. So pretty decent. We can take a look here at Bitcoin's price. That's at 67,000. So we'll see how that kind of does going forward. You can see if I open that chart here, doesn't look to be doing too well since 2026. You can see here. It's been kind of interesting. Now, I don't read charts in terms of like support and all that stuff, so I can't tell you if this looks good or not. But to me, if you just look at the 200-day moving average versus the 20-day, you can kind of see that. That's how I kind of form my opinion. And you can kind of see how that typically does. But with that being said, actually, when was the last time you can like see a significant time where this was true? Like here, right? So this is 2022. You can see how that did. This 20-day. So it's in a bear, yeah, at least seemingly. But yeah, that is it for me. and hopefully the portfolio continues to do good. As I said, this side of the algorithmic stuff, we are in kind of a short position, or I don't even call it a short right now because like BSV is more like stable because it's like a bond index, right? And BTALs is like anti-beta fund, which it is kind of short, but it's not. It's just kind of, it's not super 1-to-1. It's not like an inverse ticker, right? So, anyways, that is it for me. And as always, I wish you guys a wealthy future. Oh, actually, before I go, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. We hit 50K, which is like a huge milestone here. As you can see here, this is the first time in our in the portfolio's history that we've hit 50K. So we are 1/4 of our goal, which is super exciting. Hoping that continues. I think we can probably finish 2026 at 100K. I'm at least hoping so. According to the amount of it, if I just go over here and say, well, we're gonna put 3K in every month for the next, 8 months. We'll have 25K. Oh, okay, not 100K. I'm sorry, but probably close to 75K. I'm hoping, which would be nice. So, getting really close to hitting that as well, potentially. We just need a little bit of gain. Who knows if that's going to continue? Like, again, this could completely crash. I don't know. But the nice thing is we at least hit it, right? That's one goal. The last goal that we had really was probably 25K. So it's been nice to kind of get to a next goal. I think our next goal, real true goal, like milestone, would be 100K. And then from there, it's 200K. And 200K is kind of like my current goal, is I could do a lot of stuff with that 200K. So who knows? But anyways, that is it for me. And as always, I wish you guys a wealthy future.